It's the biggest game of the year, baby. The Peacock game. Cue it.
I am a peacock! You gotta let me fly!
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into another edition of Locked On Irish. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, and thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. As always, you can find the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and I'm the host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. I've been podcasting about the Irish since 2020, and I'm currently a producer covering college football at the Fox Sports headquarters in Los Angeles. And today, we officially turn the page to Notre Dame's next opponent, the Central Michigan Chippewas. Is it the most exciting matchup? Nope. Is it tempting to look ahead to the game against Ohio State next Saturday? Yup. And trust me, I'm already counting down the days until September 23rd, but Notre Dame has to take care of business this Saturday before we go full speed ahead into covering what could be the biggest game of this entire college football season. So I'm going to spend today going over what Central Michigan brings to the table. Spoiler alert, not a whole lot. And since I don't expect the outcome of this game to ever really be in jeopardy, I'll also spend a bit of time on what Notre Dame can do in this game to get them ready against Ohio State and also the rest of the season, because that Ohio State game is just the beginning of a really difficult four-game stretch for the Irish. But first, let me get this out of the way. I know I sound like shit. Pardon my French. I'm a little delirious right now. I'm off all these cold and flu and sinus medication. But yeah, I'm not feeling too hot right now. As a matter of fact, I feel kind of terrible, so I apologize for the fact that I probably sound like a pug right now, but I'm going to push through this, and hopefully I'll be feeling better by the time tomorrow's episode comes out, so we're all in this together. We're going to get through this. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about Central Michigan. Here's what you need to know about this matchup. So kickoff is set to happen at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Peacock, so get out there, restart that Peacock subscription, help out the elderly with theirs. We know they always struggle with technology, so if your grandma or grandpa is trying to watch this game, go over their house and get their Peacock set up, because I don't think it's probably still working after last year's game against UNLV. And look, on the Peacock thing, I hate it. I'm sure you hate it too. It is what it is, and at least NBC is making all the Big Ten teams do it once a year as well. I saw their slate and how like some Ohio State fans reacted to it. It wasn't great, to say the least. So we're all in this together in that as well. Notre Dame is favored by 34.5 points at the time of this recording on FanDuel, and they've also got the over-under set at 54.5. So Vegas is projecting a 45-10 win for the Irish or something around there. If that holds, it would be the fourth straight game that Notre Dame has put up 40 or more points this season. Irish Sports Daily pointed out on Instagram Tuesday that Notre Dame's 143 points through the first three games of the season is the most since 1944. It has been a long time since the offense has generated this much points early on in the season. And honestly, they should be able to keep that going on Saturday. Central Michigan is coached by Jim McElwain, not McElwain, like I said in the season preview podcast. Shout out to Charlie Wooding. He scolded me for the way I pronounced that, but in my defense, I did have a colleague at a previous job who had their name spelled exactly how Jim McElwain's is spelled, and she pronounced her name McElwain. So when it was time to do the season preview, I did a little Google search. The first thing that came up was McElwain. I got it wrong. It probably sounded so stupid when you listen to the season preview podcast, so I apologize. The criticism was warranted. I will get it right today. Back to our guy, Jim McElwain. He's in his fifth season leading the Chippewas. He's probably more famous for his time as the head coach of the Florida Gators. His tenure at Florida started in 2015, and he actually went 19-8 in his first two seasons, but then got fired midway through his third season after starting 3-4 that year. His time at Florida was very strange. I went over the reasons why in the season preview show. I don't really feel like I need to rehash it all over again. But if you don't know, it involves a guy who people thought was McElwain. Instead, it's basically his doppelganger, and he may or may not have been lying butt naked next to a shark. I'll leave it at that. You can look up the rest. He was out of coaching for a year after the Florida tenure before he took over at Central Michigan in 2019. He actually went 20-13 in his first 3 years at CMU. They even beat Washington State in the Sun Bowl after the 2021 season, but then things went south in a hurry. Starting in 2022, they finished 4-8 last season. This year, they lost to Michigan State 31-7 in the season opener, and then they squeaked by New Hampshire in week 2 by a final score of 45-42. Weirdly, Central Michigan has had some pretty good coaches, or I guess I should say pretty prominent coaches come through the program, including none other than the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, Brian Kelly. Kelly coached Central Michigan from 2004 through 2006 in his first D1 job after coaching at Grand Valley State before he eventually left for Cincinnati. Brian Kelly had a 19-16 record leading the Chippewas in 3 seasons. And Butch Jones, the former Tennessee coach who was most recently seen crying on the sideline as the head coach of Arkansas State when they lost 73-0 in their season opener to the Oklahoma Sooners. Butch Jones, man, he just cracks me up. When he was the head coach at Tennessee, he had the most ridiculous slogans of all time. Like, his whole thing was like brick by brick. And I actually went to a Tennessee game in 2013 while he was the head coach, and they would literally pass out foam bricks to all the students and all the fans. And it was like a collector's item. Like, some of the kids that I was staying with, they had like a bunch of these foam bricks in their apartment. And at the time, they were all in on the Butch Jones era. Things have changed. He also... He had a great line about he was graduating champions of life, not necessarily on the field. Either way, he went into Alabama coaching purgatory and is now with Arkansas State, but he did spend some time at Central Michigan as well. What does this all have to do with the game on Saturday? Not a whole lot, but I thought it was interesting that so many coaches who had prominent Power 5 jobs went through this specific MAC school. I just thought it was kind of random. Not to mention the fact that this game was originally scheduled to be a reunion of sorts when Brian Kelly was still at the helm at Notre Dame, so it makes it a little bit funny to think about what could have been. What's the headline for this game? To me, it's pretty simple. This is a tune-up game before Ohio State. Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff would never say it publicly, but I'm 99% sure that the coaching staff is already preparing for the Buckeyes behind closed doors. This is an opportunity for Notre Dame to work out some kinks, get some younger guys some opportunities before Ohio State comes to town next week. And we actually saw Brian Kelly basically say that Notre Dame was gearing up to play Clemson after their win against Pitt way back in 2020. He was pretty open about the fact that he knew that the team was good enough and talented enough to beat the teams on the schedule before that Clemson game and that they wouldn't overlook them on Saturday, but at the same time, they could begin their preparations to beat Clemson because at the time, that was Clemson at their peak of their powers, even though they didn't have Trevor Lawrence in that game. They still kind of seemed unbeatable at that point in time, and he just was like, yeah, this is a senior-led team, a bunch of veterans. We got to get ready for Clemson, and they did. They beat Clemson in the regular season that year. So I would expect Notre Dame has already started prep for Ohio State, and they just need to kind of get through this game with no injuries. That's probably the most important thing about this game outside of getting an easy win. Notre Dame needs to come out of this unscathed. J.D. Bertrand is currently dealing with a concussion, or at least he's in concussion protocol, so I don't expect to see him in this game. But obviously, he's a player that Notre Dame needs against Ohio State. So you don't want to lose any starters in this one. Hopefully, the starters can start to fade out of the game by halftime. Maybe Steve Angeli gets more reps with the ones we'll see. I don't think Notre Dame is going to add any new wrinkles or anything for this matchup. Certainly not anything they intend to use against Ohio State, or at least something new that they intend to use against Ohio State. But getting game reps is important for everyone, even someone as experienced as Sam Hartman, because he has only played 3 full games with this team. Actually, not even 3 full games, 2.5 full games so far. So every rep matters. Every rep is important. And clearly, Notre Dame is still working out some issues, specifically on the offensive and defensive line. Plus, the wide receivers are looking to have a bounce-back game after a relatively quiet performance against NC State, and all of that matters as they prepare to play one of the best teams in the country in just under 2 weeks. I don't expect to learn a ton about Notre Dame in this game, but it's still a good opportunity to develop and build some cohesion at some areas that definitely need it. And as we know, another MAC school, Toledo, gave an eventual 11-1 Notre Dame team everything it could possibly handle 2 years ago. I was at that game. It sucked. So the Irish have to take care of business in this one before they turn the page to Ohio State. So coming up next, I'll go over what to expect from Central Michigan on the field. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Before I dive into the Central Michigan Scouting Report, I wanted to remind you to please like the video below and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe there as well. Okay, let's take a look at the Central Michigan offense. Their offensive coordinator is a guy named Paul Petrino. Paul Petrino's dad is a football coach named Bob, but not that Bobby Petrino. I know, I was bummed. I thought I had unlocked this hidden storyline or hidden gem in this game, but his dad is not, in fact, the Bobby Petrino, the bad guy Bobby P, the offensive coordinator for the Texas A&M Aggies. Just a coincidence there. Also, Jim McElwain was the offensive coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban for 4 seasons before he got his first head coaching job. He actually won 2 national championships while he was at Alabama, one in 2009 and then the other in 2011. So I assume he's heavily involved with the offense as well. All that being said, their offense is kind of all over the place. Central Michigan only put up 7 points against Michigan State, and Michigan State is just okay this year, I would say. And even though their offense put up 38 points on New Hampshire, they got a kick return for a touchdown in that game as well, so their offense only scored 38. That's an FCS school, man. I'm just not that impressed by that, the fact that they were in a shootout against New Hampshire. I didn't even know they played football in New Hampshire, and I lived in New England for 2.5 years. Their entire operation is dependent on redshirt freshman quarterback Bert Emanuel Jr. He is more of a runner than a passer, but he can still be effective. Emanuel Jr. had a 66-yard rushing touchdown against New Hampshire, and he finished that game with 101 rush yards on 21 attempts with 2 touchdowns. The problem is he did go 7 of 19 passing that game for 193 yards, which is pretty good, and he added 2 touchdowns through the air, but also 2 interceptions as well. So 7 of 19 passing would suggest he's not the most accurate guy, but he is a really good athlete. He's very fast. He can make guys miss in the open field, and it is something that Notre Dame's defense is definitely going to have to account for. As a matter of fact, they have to focus on shutting down his running ability entirely because that is the majority of their offense. But it is good practice for this Notre Dame defense. They just had to go up against a running quarterback in Brennan Armstrong. They passed that test with flying colors in that one. They looked great against Armstrong. But they're also going to have to go up against Duke quarterback Riley Leonard, who's a very good runner. And then, USC quarterback Caleb Williams, in case you haven't heard of him by now, he's pretty decent at avoiding the blitz and just making plays and making magic with his feet. Moving on from Caleb. Ugh. Michigan State was able to bottle up Emanuel Jr. completely. He finished with just 128 yards of total offense in that game, 81 yards passing, 41 yards rushing on 17 attempts. He did get sacked 3 times. And if there's one skilled player on Central Michigan's offense to keep an eye out for, it's Chris Parker. He's a sophomore wide receiver, number 13. He's averaging 28.4 yards per catch. He's a pretty big dude. He's listed as 6'3", 195 pounds. And he has 142 receiving yards through 2 games and a touchdown on just 5 catches, hence the absurd average per completion. Do I expect Notre Dame to struggle covering him? No. But when you are playing a team with such inferior talent, the only possible way that they can beat you is with big plays, and Chris Parker is their big play threat. Eliminate him, you probably eliminate big plays. You eliminate any chance of that offense scoring points. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. Their offensive line has been pretty horrendous the first 2 games. Here's a stat for you. They've already given up 18 tackles for loss for negative 82 yards through just 2 games. That's an average of 9 a game. Not great. They've already given up 6 sacks through 2 games. And considering how bad their line has been, it's not surprising that they are 125th in the country in third down offense and a red zone offense. I do understand that those national rankings are a little bit skewed because most teams have only played 2 or the max 3 games, but still, they're also 117th in the country in yards per play with 4.8, 122nd in pass yards per game, but they do average a staggering 14.3 yards per completion. So when they do complete a pass, it usually does go for a big gain. Okay, as for the Central Michigan defense, it hasn't been much better this season. As a matter of fact, it's been worse. They're led by Rob Akey, who's in his 5th year at Central Michigan and has been coaching college football for over 30 years. He's been around for a long time, and he's known for being very aggressive, and that shows on the stat sheet. In 2022, despite the fact that the Chippewas finished 4-8 on the year, they finished fourth in the entire country in tackles for loss with 100 for negative 413 yards. They also registered 33 sacks last season, which was 26th in the country. This has been a hallmark of Akey's teams. He loves to blitz, loves to get after it in the backfield. And in 2021, they registered 43 sacks on the season, which was top 5 in the country. And according to Jack Sobel from Blue and Gold, every single Central Michigan defense under Akey ranked in the top 4 in the MAC in sacks. I realize it's the MAC, but still, you kind of get my point here. They're going to be very aggressive. They have not had as much success this season. Granted, small sample size, but I don't expect those things to change against Notre Dame. So far this year, they've been pretty solid against the run. They only give up an average of 86 rushing yards per game, but they are terrible against the pass. So I'm not even sure if they're good against the run. It maybe just teams like to pass on them so much because they have so much success when they do it. Central Michigan gave up 493 passing yards and 4 touchdowns through the air to New Hampshire. They weren't able to pressure their quarterback either. They registered 1 sack on 51 dropbacks. That being said, some guys to keep an eye out for. Jacques Bristol, he's their defensive tackle. He's number 10. He's a senior. He's been around a long time. He already has 3 tackles for loss this season and a sack. Prior to this year, he's racked up 20 TFLs, 9 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles and recovered 2 fumbles as well. He's a pretty solid player on the interior of their defensive line. They've also got a safety, Trey Jones. He's number 3. He's pretty decent. He's got 11 tackles on the year, TFL, and racked up 122 tackles during his freshman and sophomore seasons at Central Michigan. Other than that, it's kind of it on the defense. They've given up 73 points through 2 games, and it's not like they're playing Georgia. They played Michigan State and New Hampshire, so Notre Dame should be able to put up a lot of points early and often in this one. Don't have a ton on their special teams. Their kicker is Tristan Matson. He made a 47-yard field goal against New Hampshire, and as far as I can see, that's his only made field goal of his career, so 1 for 1. Kind of efficient, I guess. So when I look at this team, I see an offense that relies on a run-first quarterback, and he literally just runs around and hopes something works out. And I see an ultra-aggressive defense that has a ton of holes in it that should be pretty easy for Notre Dame to exploit. Will they play hard? Of course they will. This is a moment these guys are going to remember forever. It's their first and only trip to Notre Dame. They're going to be telling their grandkids about this game, so I expect them to come out with a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and they got nothing to lose in this one. So maybe they put up a fight early. How long is that going to last? That remains to be seen. All right, now that I've gone over the Central Michigan side of things, I'll go over what I want to see from Notre Dame in this matchup, and then I'll share some predictions right after this. College football season is here, and this season, the Locked On Podcast Network is kicking up our coverage with a new show called College Football Kickoff Live, which airs every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover everything going on in the sport and go in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of college hosts covering their team every day. Today's episode is also brought to you by Jase Medical. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase Case. The Jase Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in case of an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand, and it's simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Okay, we've got one more segment left, and I can literally feel my voice going out. So here's what I want to see from Notre Dame. I want to see the offensive line make a big leap in this one. This is a get-right game for the Notre Dame offensive line. And again, as I've been saying all week, all of this criticism about the offensive line is relative to our expectations for this group going into the season. There is a ton of talent, not just on that line, but in the entire offensive line room. And I think we can all agree there has been a lack of a consistent push in the run game really since the Navy game. They dominated Navy throughout that game, but clearly that Navy defense is not someone to be feared this season, to say the least. Some of these issues seem to do with communication, which also has to do with the lack of experience playing together. Notre Dame is breaking in 2 new guards, so sometimes mistakes are going to happen because of that. It makes sense. But then you got Blake Fisher, who struggled mightily in that first half against NC State and just really has not looked like himself so far this season. Is he hurt? I've heard some people allude to the fact that he might be, but I don't really know. All I know is that he's out there and he has not looked like himself. And we know how good of a player he can be. Just think about when he missed practically his entire freshman season due to a knee injury, comes back, plays in the bowl game after missing all that time, and has an unbelievable game against Oklahoma State, playing the entire game when we didn't even think he was going to play. So we know he's got it in him. Hopefully he's able to get healthy and be ready to play and be the player that we all know he's capable of being. I just think we're reaching a point of the season where it's becoming put up or shut up time on the offensive line. They haven't been bad. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying like, oh, this group stinks or anything like that. We just had such high expectations. We were talking about them as favorites to win the Joe Moore Award, and I do believe that they will improve as the season goes along because they'll just have more experience playing with each other and the guys are talented. But they need a sharp improvement starting this week because we know who's coming. We know that Ohio State is just 2 weeks away, and they need to be ready for that one because that is a really stout defensive line that the Buckeyes have. So I think this is a great opportunity to sort of get things right, work out the kinks, and then hopefully take a big step in the right direction so that Notre Dame is prepared for that gauntlet coming up in the middle of the season. And as we know, Central Michigan is going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to test this offensive line. Sometimes they might get home. It happens. If you blitz 7 guys, you're probably going to get a guy or two through. But part of that responsibility is on the quarterback to get the guys in the right protection. And the offensive line is going to have to step up, not just in the passing game, but also in the run game. They're going to have to get a push and open up some holes for the Notre Dame running backs. If they aren't able to do it this game, I'm going to be a little bit worried going to that Ohio State game. That's all I'm going to say. Defensively, I want to see that line make life hell for Burt Emanuel Jr. I know that 4 sacks in 3 games isn't great, but that Navy game doesn't even really count for that metric because they never really dropped back to pass. I thought the defensive line played really well against NC State, especially keeping Brennan Armstrong in check. They held him to 26 rushing yards and 12 attempts with a long of 9. That's really, really impressive. And their plan in that game was not so much to sack him as it was to contain him and prevent him from scrambling. Because if you do sell out and try to get the sack and you don't get it, more often than not, you open up some lanes for the quarterback to scramble, and they did not do that against NC State. So their 1 sack in that game did come courtesy of Donovan Heinisch, and I just want to say he looks so much like his older brother, Kurt. It's scary. I know they wear the same number. They look alike, but still, just the way they play, it's eerily similar. And if Donovan can become the player that Kurt was, that's a great player to have in the interior of your defensive line. So last week, they did get a lot of pressure. They were officially credited with 6 quarterback hurries. I think it was a little bit higher than that, honestly, and it led to a very low completion percentage. And I would just like to see them actually bring Burt Emanuel down in the backfield. Let's get those sack numbers up a little bit. And also, let's get the tackles for loss numbers up because that should be better. There's really no excuse for that. They only have 13 through 3 games against pretty weak competition. That 4.33 per game average is actually outside of the top 100 nationally. So let's get those numbers up, and that's going to start with the defensive line. I'd also like to see the receivers get back on track after a pretty quiet game against NC State. In total, the receivers had 6 catches for 128 yards in that game, but those stats are a little bit deceiving because 65 of them came on 1 play by Chris Tyree. Do all of them count? Yes, but that was like a little dump pass in a busted coverage. I'd like to see Notre Dame's receivers be a little bit more active, make more plays downfield, and considering the fact that Central Michigan secondary is not good, very bad, if there were ever a game to build some players' confidence on the outside, this is it. I also think Notre Dame needs to clean up the stupid stuff from the NC State game, the penalties, the fumbles. That's something that Notre Dame can work on this week that's applicable to every game down the road. And last, but certainly not least, no injuries. I'd love it if we could get Sam Hartman out of the game by halftime, just like they did against Tennessee State, because we need him to be protected. Watching the Jets game on Monday night freaked me out because it's a reminder how a season can go to hell on one bad play that knocks out your quarterback. Aaron Rodgers was with the Jets for 4 plays, torn Achilles, done for the season, potentially done for his career. We need Sam Hartman in bubble wrap until that Ohio State game, so he does not need to touch the ground against Central Michigan. They need to protect him at all costs, and also all the other starters, because J.D. Bertrand, I already mentioned this, key player dealing with an injury. We can't have any more of that going into Ohio State. So that gets me to my predictions here. For the score, I think Notre Dame wins 42-6. I like the Irish to cover that 34.5-point spread, which would make them 4-0 against the spread this year. I think the offense keeps it rolling. They should be able to rattle off a lot of big plays against this leaky defense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Notre Dame should be able to shut them down all game. if the only player that makes you pause for even a second is a run-first freshman quarterback, then I'm just really not worried about them considering the veteran leadership that this defense has. They aren't going to be able to run the ball with their backs, and Notre Dame showed it knows how to contain a mobile quarterback who likes to run when they played against NC State. I've got a few other predictions as well. I think Tobias Merriweather is going to get his first touchdown of the season. He did have one catch against NC State, and it was a big one, 45-yarder, and I think him and Hartman are finally going to connect on a deep ball in this game for a touchdown. I'm also predicting a touchdown for Jadarian Price on the ground. I loved the way he was running the ball against NC State. At one point, he kind of supercharged that rushing game or that running game, and they had really not been able to get anything going until he came in. So that was great to see. I think he's going to get in the end zone in this one. And defensively, I'm expecting a huge game from Jack Kaiser. He's going to be on the field a lot more with J.D. Bertrand out in concussion protocol. I think they're going to move Kaiser to the mic. I'm really excited to see what he can do at that position. I don't think they're going to start Drake Bowen. Maybe things change by the time the game happens on Saturday. But I think Jack Kaiser is going to be on the field a lot. And when he is on the field, man, he just makes plays. Minus that absurd offsides penalty he had on the punt last week against NC State. Very uncharacteristic of him. But I think as the Mike linebacker, we're going to get to see how does he do playing the inside. I just think he's a really good player, and I'm excited to watch him Saturday. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps. And while we're at it, you know what? I think Thomas Harper is going to get a pick. He had such a good game against NC State. He deserves a pick or two. He was great in coverage, great at making tackles. He even led the team, so I think Thomas Harper gets a pick in this one. But that is going to do it for me today. I made it. I got through it. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this today because of how horrible I felt, and I thought I sounded so bad that no one would want to listen. If you made it to this point, thank you for riding through it with me, and thanks as always for making this your first listen of the day. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the show on social media. I've got to go take some more medicine, and hopefully by the time you guys hear me tomorrow, I will sound a lot better. I'll see you then.